Something happens in many marriages around the early 40s that nobody prepares the husband for. One day he looks at his wife, the woman he built a life with, and he senses a shift he can't quite explain. The tone changes. The patience changes. The way she looks at herself changes. And he sits there thinking, what just happened to the person he knows? It is happening everywhere. Men are watching steady, dependable partners start drifting in ways that do not match the woman they married. And most husbands cling to a comforting lie. Not his wife. Not their family. They have history. They have responsibilities. They're different. But comfort is not protection. There is a clock nobody can negotiate with, and if the husband does not understand what that clock is doing inside a person, he will react in the worst way possible. This is not about wisdom or maturity, like an inspirational quote. This is about identity pressure. For many people, self-worth quietly rests on a few invisible systems that run in the background. Feeling noticed. Feeling wanted. Feeling like they still matter to the outside world. When someone is younger, the world hands them little confirmations without them even asking. Compliments. Invitations. The subtle look that says they still have it. Then biology and culture do what they always do. Attention changes. Compliments change. People become polite instead of eager. And if someone tied too much of their identity to being desired or admired, that shift does not feel like aging. It feels like the floor moved. This is not about vanity. It is about identity collision. It is about waking up and realizing the version of the self that the world rewarded for years is no longer guaranteed. Time feels shorter. Options feel fewer. The mirror feels louder. And this is where it can get dangerous. Instead of grieving the change and rebuilding from something deeper, some people chase proof. Proof that they still have it. Proof that they can still trigger desire. Proof that they still matter. They do not always say it out loud. They just start acting differently. And the most painful part for the husband is this. His devotion can start to feel expected to her, like background noise. It becomes, of course he loves me. It becomes obligated. But a stranger's attention feels chosen. It feels fresh. It feels like a new vote for her worth. If the husband does not understand this mechanism, he will try to fix it with more effort, more gifts, more pleading. And he will accidentally teach the relationship a cruel lesson. He is guaranteed, and outside attention is exciting. Now this is where most men panic and destroy their own chances. When the husband senses her drifting, he starts interrogating. He starts watching her phone. He starts demanding reassurance. He starts turning every small change into a courtroom. In his head it feels logical. If he can just get the truth, he can fix it. But emotionally, what she hears is not leadership. She hears fear. She hears control. She hears him trying to trap her inside the life she is suddenly questioning. So what does this phase actually look like in real life? Not in dramatic movie scenes, but in quiet daily signals men ignore until it is too late. It starts small. The wife cares more about how she looks in places she used to treat casually. She becomes more private, not automatically because she is cheating, but because privacy makes her feel like she has a self again. She scrolls more. She posts more. She reconnects with people from the past. She laughs at messages he doesn't see. She becomes allergic to routine, not because routine is evil, but because routine now feels like a sentence. And if he asks the wrong questions in the wrong tone, she won't explain it. She will hide it. Then comes the second layer. Resentment that doesn't sound like anger. It sounds like criticism. She starts rewriting their history in her head. Things she tolerated for years suddenly feel unbearable. Not because he got worse overnight, but because her patience used to be powered by a story. We are building. We are progressing. We are doing the right thing. When that story collapses, all the compromises become evidence against him. And this is the trap. The husband will want to argue the facts. He will say he provided, he showed up, he did everything a husband is supposed to do. Maybe he did. But supposed to is not the same as felt. A person can be well treated and still feel unseen. A person can have stability and still feel like they disappeared inside it. That is why this phase is not solved by being more correct. It is solved by understanding the mechanisms and responding like a man with a spine, not like a man begging to be kept. Because if the husband responds with desperation, he becomes easy to manipulate. If he responds with anger, he gives her a villain to justify leaving. If he responds with denial, he sleepwalks into the end. The only response that has a chance is calm. Clarity. Boundaries without drama. Standards without pleading. A steady center that says he sees what is happening, he won't chase, and he won't tolerate disrespect. The first mechanism is confusion dressed up as change. She doesn't announce a problem, she becomes harder to read. One week she wants space, the next week she wants attention, then she acts like nothing happened. He asks what's wrong and he gets a shrug, a laugh, a nothing, or you wouldn't understand. And because he loves her, he starts working overtime inside his own head. Did he do something? Did he miss something? Is it his fault? That mental overtime is the point. Confusion keeps him busy, and a busy mind is easy to steer. The second mechanism is testing, not with big dramatic tests, but with tiny social experiments. She pushes a boundary and watches what he does. She cancels last minute and acts casual about it. She becomes late and expects him to swallow it. She flirts with attention in front of him just enough to see if he reacts. Not everyone does this consciously, but many do it instinctively. Because when a person feels their power fading, they start checking where their power still works. And if his response is to laugh it off while it hurts, or to beg for clarity, he has handed her the result. He will tolerate discomfort to keep access. The third mechanism is the rewrite. This one is brutal because it turns their own history into a weapon. For years he was a good man. Then suddenly he was never there emotionally. 4 years she praised stability. Now stability is boring. 4 years they were building a life. Now he was controlling her. The past did not change, but the story about the past did. And when someone rewrites the story, they are preparing a future where leaving feels justified. If he debates every detail, he will lose, because he is fighting a narrative, not a fact. The fourth mechanism is outside validation becoming a drug. A coworker laughs too hard at her jokes. A message comes in at night that makes her smile. An old friend reconnects, and suddenly she remembers the version of herself that felt lighter, younger, more alive. Again, this does not automatically mean cheating. But it does mean her nervous system is craving novelty. And novelty feels like proof. Feels like oxygen. At home, love is steady. Outside, attention is sharp. One feels safe. The other feels alive. And when someone confuses alive with right, they start making decisions that look irrational to the person still living in the old story. The fifth mechanism is resentment hidden under self-improvement. She starts working on herself, but it comes with contempt. New clothes, new friends, new routines, and suddenly the home feels like it belongs to somebody else. She stops asking for help and then punishes him for not helping. She stops sharing her feelings and then accuses him of not understanding her. This is how resentment works when it is not processed honestly. It creates a trap where he is always wrong, whether he moves or stays still. And if he does not name that pattern, he will spend months trying to win approval in a game designed so he cannot win. The sixth mechanism is emotional withdrawal that looks like peace. No fighting. No yelling. Just distance. She is polite. She is functional. She does her tasks. But the warmth is gone. The eye contact is shorter. The touch is rare. The laughter is for someone else. And because nothing bad happened, he feels crazy for feeling abandoned. This is the stage where many men make the biggest mistake. They think if they do more, she will come back. But more of the same is what trained the relationship into this shape. He can't outwork emotional withdrawal with chores and flowers. He needs clarity. The seventh mechanism is the switch of roles. He becomes the anxious one, she becomes the judge. He is the one requesting connection, she is the one granting it when she feels like it. He starts negotiating basic respect. He starts asking permission to be heard. And the longer he stays in that posture, the more the relationship trains both of them to accept it as normal. Now, the husband is not supposed to respond by becoming a police officer. Stalking, interrogating, controlling, that turns him into exactly what she needs him to be so she can tell herself a clean story. He is also not supposed to respond by becoming a clown, trying to entertain her back into love. That turns him into a performer, and performers are not respected. He has to hold two truths at once. He can have empathy for a person struggling with identity and still demand respect. He can understand the pressure of aging and still refuse manipulation. He can love his family and still refuse to be treated like a background option. If her behavior becomes confusing, he does not chase the confusion. He names it once, calmly. He says he feels distance and mixed signals, and he is open to talking, but he won't live in a half-in, half-out relationship. Then he stops begging. Because the moment he begs, he teaches her that ambiguity works on him. If she tests boundaries, he does not punish and he does not collapse. He sets a standard. If they make plans, they respect them. If something changes, they communicate. If it keeps happening, he stops planning around her. A boundary is not a demand. It is a decision. If she rewrites the past, he does not argue history for 3 hours. He anchors to reality and moves forward. He can acknowledge that she feels unseen, and he can be willing to improve, but he will not accept a story where everything was always terrible. Then he brings it back to behavior. What changes now? What does respect look like now? What happens next week? People who want to repair talk about the future. People who want to justify leaving stay trapped in the past. If outside validation becomes a drug, he does not compete with strangers. He does not become a jealous teenager. He stabilizes his own life and his center. He makes one thing clear. He is not there to police friendships. He is there for a committed marriage. If attention from outside becomes more important than respect inside, then they have a problem. If she withdraws emotionally, he stops filling the silence with panic. He stops writing essays in texts. He stops buying warmth. He creates a structured opportunity for connection and he observes. He can ask for a focused talk without phones for 20 minutes. If she is not willing repeatedly, he stops pretending the marriage is fine and he faces reality with spine. This becomes clearer through a story. The husband does not lose his family because of one man, one message, or one night out. He loses the plot because he reacts to every signal like an emergency. In the same week, he becomes a detective at home and a servant at home. One day he demands answers, the next day he begs for affection, then the next day he turns cold. And every time he swings like that, the relationship learns a brutal lesson. His nervous system is controllable. Her distance moves his entire world. It starts with something small. The wife goes to a colleague's dinner. Nothing illegal, nothing theatrical, just people talking and laughing, and for a few hours she is seen as a person, not only as a role. When she comes home, she is glowing in a way he hasn't seen in years. Not because she met someone. Because she felt noticed. She felt alive. She felt like herself. If the husband is calm, he becomes curious with strength. He asks what she enjoyed, what made her feel light, what energy she wants more of in their life. But he doesn't do that. He tightens. He asks too many questions. He makes jokes with an edge. He tries to pull that glow back into a cage called safety. The wife smiles and says nothing. The next week she goes out again. Now the husband feels the ticking in his head. He can't name it, but he can feel one thing. He is losing control. So he tries the oldest move in the world. He tries to outlove a psychological shift with effort. Gifts. Dates. More messages. More perfect husband. But the more perfect he acts, the less real it feels, because it is powered by fear, not presence. And fear has a smell. It can hide inside flowers, but the body still detects it. One night, after she comes home late, he finally says what has been rotting inside him. He accuses. He raises his voice. He demands proof. In his mind, he is protecting his family. In her nervous system, It lands as control. And when a person is already wrestling with the question, "Who am I now?" control often pushes them away faster. The wife does not have to scream. She just goes cold. That cold is not always hatred. Sometimes it is a door closing. The next day he panics. He apologizes. Then he gifts again. Then he questions again. Then he goes silent again. He swings between extremes, hoping one extreme will work. But the more he swings, the more he teaches the relationship that he has no center, that she can control his heartbeat with distance. And that is the crossroads. In that moment, the husband does not need more tactics. He needs clarity. Clarity about standards. Clarity about boundaries. Clarity about what he will do if the marriage continues to live on ambiguity. Because he cannot win a war by begging the other person to stop shooting. So the husband does the hardest thing a frightened man can do. He stops chasing the moving target and he starts leading his own life again. He stops treating every mood like a fire alarm. He stops trying to buy peace with gifts and performative romance. He stops interrogating like a detective. He chooses one calm conversation, one clear frame, and he refuses to repeat it like a broken record. He picks a time when the home is quiet, when nobody is hungry, when there is no audience and no deadline. He speaks without accusations and without poetry. He says the marriage has changed. He says he feels distance. He says he is willing to rebuild, but he is not willing to live in a relationship that is half present and half disappearing. He invites honesty, but he does not beg for it. He makes one request that can be measured. He asks for consistent communication, basic respect, and a shared plan to rebuild connection. If she tries to turn the talk into a trial of his past mistakes, he does not deny everything and he does not confess to crimes he did not commit. He stays anchored in the present. He can acknowledge where he fell short, but he refuses a rewrite that paints him as a villain so she can feel clean leaving. He brings it back to one simple question. Is she willing to work with him, yes or no? And what does that work look like in the next 7 days? If she answers with vague fog, the classic, "I don't know, I just need space," "You're overthinking," he does not panic. He names the fog. He says he respects her feelings, but he cannot build a marriage on ambiguity. He offers structure. A weekly check-in. A date night without phones. A simple agreement about how they speak when conflict rises. If she refuses structure and only wants freedom with no responsibility, he treats that as data, not as a personal collapse. Then he watches behavior, not words. Words are cheap in a crisis because words can buy time. Behavior costs something. He watches whether she shows up to the talk or keeps dodging. He watches whether she tries to collaborate or tries to win. He watches whether she can admit even one small thing without flipping the script. Repair looks a certain way. Repair looks like accountability. Repair looks like effort that lasts beyond a good weekend. Repair looks like respect in the boring hours, not only in the emotional highs. He also rebuilds his own center outside the relationship, not as revenge and not to play games, but because a man without a center becomes a hostage. He sleeps on time. He trains his body. He takes care of his work. He spends time with friends who make him stronger, not friends who feed his paranoia. He becomes the kind of man who can survive either outcome. That changes everything, because desperation is the fuel that makes manipulation powerful. Inside the home, he stops trying to win her back and starts trying to restore a healthy frame. He takes real ownership of the family rhythm. Not in a controlling way, but in a responsible way. He handles tasks without performing for applause. He becomes predictable in character, not predictable in begging. And he restores small moments of warmth that are not negotiations. A short walk after dinner. Coffee on Sunday morning. A 10-minute check-in where both speak and both listen. He does not make it a grand performance. He makes it a stable ritual. He stops rewarding disrespect. If she becomes sarcastic, he does not wrestle in the mud. He ends the conversation and returns when both can speak like adults. If she cancels plans casually, he does not complain for an hour. He simply stops planning around her until respect returns. If she uses silence as punishment, he does not chase it with essays. He gives one invitation to talk and then he protects his peace. Boundaries are not threats. Boundaries are the husband's decision about what he will participate in. And he quietly sets a time window for reality, not as a weapon, but as self-protection. 30 days of consistent effort is different from one emotional apology. 6 weeks of stable behavior is different from 2 perfect dates. If she wants to rebuild, the pattern will show it. If she wants to drift, the pattern will show that too. Ambiguity cannot survive under observation. This is the part people get wrong. The goal is not to control her. The goal is to control the husband's standards. The goal is not to punish her for feeling lost. The goal is to stop being a background option in his own marriage. A husband can have empathy for identity pressure and still insist on respect. He can understand aging and still refuse contempt. He can offer partnership and still refuse a half relationship. And here is the strange truth. If the wife is not a villain but simply lost, a calm boundary can become a lifeline. It forces clarity. It forces her to choose between collaboration and escape. When the husband stops begging, he stops being background noise. When he stops exploding, he stops giving her a villain. When he stops denying, he stops sleepwalking. He becomes a steady mirror, and a steady mirror can wake a person up. But if she is committed to the drift, if she wants the benefits of a husband and the freedom of being single, if she keeps the marriage in limbo while collecting outside validation, then the husband faces the final truth. He cannot save a marriage by himself. He can only protect himself and protect the environment his children live in. He can choose dignity over chaos. He can choose stability over endless emotional roulette. That choice does not need to be dramatic. It needs to be clean. Clean communication. Clean boundaries. Clean follow-through. If she refuses any plan forward, he stops pretending the marriage is fine. He does not need to smear her. He does not need to rage. He simply stops sacrificing his life to keep a story alive. Because families do not break only from betrayal. They break from months of confusion, contempt, and avoidance that everyone normalizes. They break when one person plays with the other person's nervous system and calls it space. They break when love becomes guaranteed and respect becomes optional. So the husband remembers what a boundary really is. It is not a demand that she change. It is a statement of what he will do. He will not chase mixed signals. He will not negotiate basic respect. He will not live inside a permanent test. He will show up as a husband with a spine, and if the relationship cannot meet that standard, he will choose the path that preserves his dignity and his children's stability. This is educational content, not a diagnosis, and every marriage is different. If there is emotional or physical abuse, the safest move is to reach out to trusted support and professional help. But as a rule, the pattern is real, and the response is simple. The husband does not chase a person back into respect. He lives in a way that makes respect the price of entry.